This is episode 329 of the Super League pod. Get the fans' eye view on the last week in Rugby League as we look to understand the disciplinary process. We recap round 2 of Super League and we pick up on the other bits and pieces that gained our attention this week. Like, who's playing in fancy dress in Hull? And no, before you ask, it isn't a clown costume. Who is the disgrace of the St David family? And who has all the emotions of a cardboard cutout? Get strapped in. It's SLP time. Hello listeners, welcome along to episode, press the wrong button, 329 of the Super League pod. It's the first regular season visit to the podcast this year for our resident St Helens fan, David. How are you doing, David?
I'm very good, Mark. Thank you very much, and very glad to be back.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Well, after yet another bloody win, no wonder you're happy to be back. And I'm of course Mark, as David said there. So we've got a bit of Wigan Saints rivalry today, but I think we're both in pretty happy moods after the opening to the season, aren't we, David?
We are. We can continue slapping each other on the back, Mark, right up until Good Friday.
Okie dokes. I think the first thing to do is if you want to tell everyone about our very best friend.
I certainly will. The Super League pod is supported by Rob's Megastore. Rob's Megastore stocks a wide variety of toys, stationery, arts and craft ideas, pet accessories, books and of course Rugby League birthday cards. Search for Rob's Megastore on eBay or find the link on our episode blog post on superleaguepod.com. SLP listeners can use the code SLP10, that's SLP10, at checkout to get 10% off any orders over £5, or enter SLP discount and give your 10% towards funding SLP's running costs instead. A worthy cause, Mark.
Good stuff. Yeah, thanks for Rob's Megastore's continued support. What have we got on the show then, David? Well, we're going to open with a few bits of listener feedback. If I sounded distracted then, it's because I am distracted because Luke Gale's suspension has just been confirmed. So we know that we'll have that to talk about, which is exciting. But we actually are going to talk a bit today. It's going to be our first episode with a news topic, as it were, because we're going to talk a little bit about the disciplinary process and around the sort of appeal or challenge process to the match review panel charges, because it was a big talking point after last week's show during the week, and I wonder if it's going to be a big talking point again now as well. With it seems like Gale getting 5 games, that's less than he was on the hook for. So we'll see if we can talk to you all about how that's all played out, and of course we've actually got some rugby to talk about as well as disciplinary here and stuff. So we've which seems to dominate the fans chat these days. But so we've got loads of fan reviews, especially on the first 3 fixtures of the Super League weekend. So that's fantastic. So we're going to go through all of those when we review the Super League. We'll recap the results from a abbreviated championship weekend with one of the Storms cancelling all the... There's been so many storms in the last week.
I forgot the already.
Yeah, the E one was the one that did for the games at the weekend.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll catch up on the bits that happened there. We'll make our guesses for next week's Super League games, and we'll float around a little bit of the Challenge Cup action that's coming up as the championship teams get into that competition. But shall we start with a few bits of shout out and feedback? And the first one I'll call out, David. It's just putting out a call really for guest hosts for episodes this year. So people might remember pre-pandemic, we gave some of the listeners an opportunity to come on and guest host probably about one show every 2 months it used to work out at. And we're going to be doing that again. So the first one of those episodes will be on the 22nd of March. There's going to also be opportunities later in the year as well for other people. So if you want to express your interest but you can't do the 22nd of March, then that's fine. Just send us... We have had some interest already for that episode on the 22nd of March as well, but we've had kind of half committals, which is great because it means that we know there's people interested in this, and it's good that we've brought it back. But at the same time, there still might be a chance for that episode to be picked up by someone, and then some of the later ones. So if you're interested in either joining me for that episode on the 22nd of March, or joining us for an episode later in the year, there'll be 4 or 5 opportunities as the year goes on. Then send us either a DM on Twitter or through Facebook Messenger, or you can email us to register your interest, basically. And then we'll either names in a hat situation if there's multiple people for the first show, or what have you, and plan that into our schedule for the year going along. It's a way for us to, hopefully hear more different fan views, isn't it? So it's not just the same old us giving the same old views.
Yeah, and it's great fun to do, isn't it? I mean, if you want to spend a few hours chatting about rugby league, this is a really good way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's that's mostly what we do, isn't it? We half the time we forget we're talking to other people, but we know that some of you we know that we do have some listeners, which is fantastic too. So shall we get on to some views that we've had from some listeners? Do you want to talk about the first talking point?
Yeah, so Brian Davies, old friend of the show, has sent commenting about recruitment for Toulouse. And his comment was, Ryan Hampshire, behave yourself, Mark. There's no obvious players, but just signing people because they're available isn't the answer. He's a pretty run-of-the-mill Super League player at best. A lot of players are also simply not cut out for moving away from the north of England. I suspect he might be one of them.
I completely agree with Brian. I either meant to say or might have mumbled in saying it that I didn't think Hampshire would necessarily be a person to solve the problems at Toulouse. I was just sort of throwing out a name that came to mind, but I agree with everything Brian's saying there. So I think the same things. It does sound like Toulouse are imminently going to be making some recruitment, which is really positive for them. It does seem like they're missing out on opportunities as well, though, doesn't it? Maybe some of the opportunities people might say, are they really an upgrade on what they've got, etc. But you look at the squad; it's very thin, and they're carrying quite a few injuries, as well as obviously the vaccine skeptics within that squad. So, I think they've just missed out on another potential there. Kristen Inu was clearly available again, but it looks like. Yeah. It looks like Lee will be the landing ground for him after he's left Lesignan. And again, he's not a top draw player, but he was in the Super League Dream Team a couple of years ago, so it's not like he's a terrible player. And there's, but really they do need help particularly in the spine and a little bit in the pack, I think.
They desperately need something. I mean, I watched just the highlights of the Salford game, which we'll come to later, and they look bereft of ideas, and I think they look bereft of fitness at the moment. It's going to take some sorting quickly, otherwise they're going to be cut adrift.
Yeah, Jamie Shaw has been talked about, but I've read things this weekend to say that's a no-goer. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But I know me and you both really hope that they can put up a fight and get things going.
Yeah, definitely. It's a terrific city, and I'm very supportive of rugby league in France. It would be a shame if it's one season visit for Toulouse into Super League, but they need to move fast.
Yep, we got a couple of views in on the Wilkes and Acton, so the Ollie Wilkes and Jamie Acton doping revelations that came out just before the show last week. I mean, we all know Acton's been up to it in the past. He's been banned from the game because of it, but Wilkes was a new revelation. So we had a couple of views in on that. Karsten said, am I right that UK anti-doping is controlling the players? If they do, then it's just like every other sport. If not, the RFL has to increase the amount of tests. And Tom Andrews said, great when you were so mediocre that no one noticed you were doping, so you had to go on national telly to tell everyone. Irritating attempt to drag the game down by two very unmemorable players.
I mean, there's been a lot of comment. I mean, less so this week. I mean, it was a bit of a storm in last week's teacup, wasn't it? I think John Wilkin made a good point, which is, the top players in the top sides in the big games are being tested very frequently, and that if we have got a problem, then it's very possibly players who are on the fringes and in the lower, less glamorous areas of the game who are desperate to make it. Maybe that's where some of these problems are. But Tom and is absolutely right. We're not we're not different to any other sport. Sorry, not Tom Carson. We're not different to any other sport. Rugby union has just as many issues as rugby league, and football has got the similar sorts of problems. So I think it is a little bit of a storm in a teacup, but you can never be complacent about these things, and we have to keep our testing up and keep educating players, and make sure that we don't have this sort of story being dominating what has been, I think, a very good start to the season.
Yeah, and look, I think part of the kind of how it came out and stuff, certainly what it seems like Jamie Acton's motivations for sure was to talk about how it's had an impact on his mental health and addiction issues and those sorts of things that really have developed because of how things went for him in his career and with all the drug taking that kind of happened there for him. So I think there's there is a message there to help support people and that sort of stuff, and also it highlights something. And if there is a bigger problem in the game than the game wants to admit, then it needs to be highlighted and brought out. I'm not sure that there is. I think it's probably about the size of problem people realise, but it gets a spotlight every now and again. The Wilkes one's interesting, isn't it? Because he basically said he started taking him when he was at Whitehaven, and that led to him getting noticed and picked up by Wigan. Now, he was only picked up by Wigan because we had a threadbare squad that year in 2006, and that was one of our horror years. He only played a handful of games for Wigan as well before he was off at Widnes back in the Championship. So it clearly didn't have a long-lasting impact on his career. Basically, Wigan used him for the games that needed to be filled with a body, and then he was gone again.
Gone again.
So. Yeah, but it is a real shame if it puts a question mark over his legacy, like as a Scotland captain and that sort of stuff, because he was playing for Scotland around that time, and that's where you would hope at the international level of the game they are being tested more, and at the Super League level of the game and that sort of stuff. Look, I don't want to slam on the guys too much about all the sorts of things Tom said, because Tom said it, so we don't need to say it, but I do think there is an argument in that's come out about like how brave really are you that you wait till your career's finished to come out with this stuff. And maybe I'm being more critical in the Wilkes case because I don't really understand the kind of story and the message, whereas in the Acton case it was very clear, linked to how he's had addiction issues, mental health issues. You could see he was a bit unhinged at times on the field, couldn't you?
Yes, you could. I remember.
He was part of that Lee side under Rowley that was, generally unhinged. So I guess he was on the edge in lots of ways. Hopefully, it can act as a cautionary tale for some younger players or some players who feel they need to do it, and then they can find other role models within the sport who can show them a different way of doing it.
Let's hope so, Mark. And as I say, let's hope it's not, this sort of thing isn't dominating the headlines on what I think has been, as I say, a very good start to the season and lots of positive things happening in our sport at the moment.
But there was a fan commenting on something else negative that happened in the sport in the last week. Do you want to take us through that one?
Yeah, this is from Barney Bathall Blue. This is about the crowd trouble at Warrington, or at least outside Warrington's ground. Seeing pictures of the smash, Castleford supporters coach Winder on Twitter. Usual mix of comments, slag off one club, or they aren't